Well,
It swings.
you're back on it.
Honey, I'm home. I got you.
You really have got me. Welcome back, everyone, to the Chip Lunch podcast. It is wonderful to be here along on this podcast journey with you, and joining us in the good ship Chip Lunch.
Good ship lollipop?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. That's what I was about to say. Is Ethan, you're back.
Hello, it is good to be back.
I don't think you've been on for about 10 episodes.
I have
or so.
not been on for something like that. Yeah.
Right.
I've been
sabbatical?
I've been at college, which is unfortunately on Fridays, which are the days where we
Friday
record
mornings.
Friday mornings. So I haven't been able to get on the podcast, but it's good to be back.
I'm just loving the green theme
Thank
that
you.
you've got on today.
Thank
You've
you.
got-
We're a bit of a green couch today.
You are.
Yeah.
Braden called this the Sublubrious
Oh, the
couch last week. Last episode.
Sublibrious. I like that. I
Salubrious.
like that. That's
It's
excellent.
very, very
What colour is
appropriate.
this?
Mauve.
Mauve?
I feel mauve's a
Maroon.
bit paler.
Maroon.
It's sort of like a mauve maroon
Yeah.
What about burgundy?
hybrid.
Burgundy.
Burgundy.
I heard a story once that someone was like genuinely serious. They were like, "Oh yeah, and you get the burgundy color."
No.
Not burgundy.
I love those
Burgundy.
things. But that's funny. That's like a fully cool example of when like there's something that you've either read or you've heard
Yep.
and you don't know it's not what people
Yes.
Do.
There's a few words in my time. I can't think of them right now, but there are a few words in
Yeah.
my time. There's a similar thing.
People who read fantasy books fight each other over the internet between the people who listen to the audiobooks and the people who read it because they pronounce names differently.
Right.
And so all the people who read, like when they read it, like a fantasy name is always weird. And like,
and you have your own way of
And yeah.
hearing it in your head.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and then, but all these audiobook people are like, no, but it's actually said like this. And anyway,
Well,
they all fight each other.
The classic one of that was Hermione from
Yeah,
Harry Potter. I thought
exactly.
it was
Yep.
Hermione.
Yep.
When I was first read
That
it, I
is
thought it
that
was
is the
Hermione.
example.
I have heard
Hermione.
lots of
And then I
people
heard it on the audiobook. It's like Hermione. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's how
But
you say
again,
it.
that's actually a name. Like the fantasy is one next level where it's not
Right.
even a name.
Not even, it's not even
and
a real
so like
word.
the author has there, and I think it's really fascinating when the author says,
Yeah.
this is how you say it. And I'm like, well, okay, that's how you say it.
Yeah.
It's like the whole shipping thing, and people go, I like, whenever there's a book or a movie with a love triangle and people like choose the other one. There's people I love dearly who choose the other one, but I'm like, but that's the story. Like, that's what happened. You don't get to pick.
Yeah.
The author wrote it.
think-
They
Yeah.
get to pick.
Yeah.
And I should say, welcome to the podcast again, Fee. But
Hi, Fee.
We're just chatting.
One of my favourite things about you is when you get really fired up about literary stuff, like the novels and stuff. I really enjoy
That is
it.
why I went there. I was like, Phil has something to say. Jump in.
But you you just get like really angry. Like I know that you and I have had, we just mentioned Harry Potter, but we've talked about how you're like, oh, I don't like Harry Potter that much. I'm like, oh, I really love it.
It's definitely not that I don't like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the revelation to me that it was to other people.
Yeah, fair enough.
And because it was such a revelation, and people are like, it's the best book ever. I'm like, it's not actually. the
I
best
actually
book
agree with
ever. And also, and I think I've mentioned to you before, like I was a lot older when Harry Potter came out, so I had read a lot of things that no offense to J.K. Rowling, she created a great story, but a lot of great stories are quite derivative. It's really derivative of stuff that I loved as a kid. So for that reason, I enjoyed it because it had that same sort of feel to it, but also it didn't, and there were ones that I'd liked better. So it didn't make me go, this is better than everything. So a lot of people, it was their gateway book to reading.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, it was, and also I didn't like the hype of, I don't know. And it also, I don't know if I even talked about this on the podcast. I've talked to you about before, the whole thing of when a book became something that you talk about. And like my reading experience growing up was nobody I knew read. And the few people who did read, they didn't read fantasy stuff, which is what I loved, like high fantasy stuff.
Your fantasy stuff was like kind of your escape from
Exactly.
life.
Well, I think we did talk about because we were talking about C.S. Lewis and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so that too was so weird with Harry Potter. Like we would go to week away and there was a book coming out and
we'd do a
people would
book
get
club.
together and talk about what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not what I'd never experienced anything like it. And it was actually, it was very weird to me. So I actually made a choice to not read Harry Potter until the last book was due out.
Oh.
Yeah. So because I also don't like waiting because
Oh.
and, not so much now, but back in the day, I read heaps. So if I read a book and another book was coming out a year later, I'd forgotten the book, and
Yeah.
there's not enough time in the world to keep rereading. I mean, there's people have favourite books that they go back to, and I have had that a couple of times over the years. But but rereading a series to get up to it, and good book series reference things that aren't really obvious. Like sometimes an author will reference it and make it really obvious that they're referencing it, and that's okay.
From the past or into
Yeah, from the past. So
Yeah,
say
yeah.
something back in book 1,
Yeah.
like it impacts what's happening in book 3 or book 4.
Yeah, so they'll bring it up.
Sometimes they'll, it'll be like slapping you over the face with
Remember that time we did this thing that was
Yeah.
really important
it. But other
that you've definitely
times,
forgotten about?
I think a really good, like, no, not better, but a particular style of writing, they don't do that. So if you've forgotten, you miss it.
Yeah.
But if you remember, that's what's going, and there's that moment of like, wow, look what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, any sort of book that comes to a conclusion. There are many books I've read over the years where you get to the conclusion like, but you didn't resolve this thing. That is so unsatisfying, and that is just laziness on the part of the author because they created something that was cool and they didn't have the heart to take it out. Anyway, that sort of stuff. So I do get passionate about that stuff because I think, if that's going to be your, I don't know, you write what you want to write, which is why I say the whole, I wish the person had ended up with this other person or there'd be an alternate ending, or the whole fan fiction thing is just very bizarre to me. But I can get the whole thing of you want to talk about the characters that you love, but changing the endings, that whole thing of doing that, yes, the author gets to choose, but the author they're not writing a book for themselves, they're writing a book for other people.
Yeah.
So you actually need to respect your readership and go, well, if I've created something, I need to resolve it. I can't just, say, it's like the classic, primary school story. You get yourself in all sorts of trouble, like you're doing creative writing, you go, and then they woke up and it was all a dream.
Yeah.
Like that's the horrendous end of the spectrum. But some books I've read, I'm like, oh no. Particularly like if something's got some sort of thriller or mystery element to it. Yeah, or police procedural, that sort of stuff. Like you've got to sort it out. It's not a good book if you don't.
I kind of feel like you're like a little bit like music snobs. You're like, I knew this band before they were famous. I feel like that's what you are with books.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't.
That's not a dig.
There is
I don't hear it as a
whole-
dig.
Like there is a really genuine thing of like fantasy's cool now. And it used to not be. There is a genuine like I was reading fantasy before it was cool.
Yeah.
And then
Because you're a big fantasy reader too.
I am, but I was not a big fantasy reader before it was cool.
Ah.
Because I think I grew up as it was getting cool. So I was just reading books
Yeah.
for me.
Well, that's the thing. Like you're talking about Harry Potter. Was I started reading in year 7, so the first 3 books were out when I was in year 7. I think first 2 or 3. So I lived through the thing of you got to wait for the book to come out, and that was actually really fun because like my mum would like order us, like pre-order it for us, like it's coming out on this day.
Yeah.
Mum, can you get it for us? Make sure you bring it home. The only problem was it was always came out when I had exams when I was in high school, which was really annoying.
Isn't that funny? I just forgot about that.
But I think maybe a little bit of similar vein to you, V, that I'd done a lot. Like I used to read a lot of books, fiction and non-fiction, and it was fun to see people like not getting excited around a TV show or something, but around a book. I think that was kind of what I liked about it too, and you could talk about it. And
Yeah. Well, we tried to do, there was that Harry Potter stuff, which was a particular thing for that, but we did try to do book club at Week Away for a while. But it was
You want to start it
very
again?
tricky to find. Yeah.
I do that.
We'd
again.
have to find something like, I think I tried to make it tick too many boxes, maybe, because I wanted it to be something that anybody could come into.
yeah, but it's so.
But
hard
I
to
also
do
wanted
that.
to be fun for people who love to read. So we and then we tried to do themes. So one year we did books that there's a movie about. And we said to people, if you're not a reader and you just want to hang out, just watch the movie and then we can talk about the differences between the book and the movie. So we were
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing was I didn't want to do something on Week Away that was exclusive.
Yeah,
And the
of
exclusive
course.
nature of it was if you hadn't read the book, well,
You couldn't hang out and do it.
I mean, you could, but you'd be sitting there going, whatever. So I'm like, let's do stuff where people can actually have a
great
real
idea.
quick, easy approach. But the funny thing was, so I think the best case scenario was, and I was also trying to do this for a couple of us who were trying to pick the books. I wanted us to have read the books beforehand, but I also wanted us to enjoy reading the books leading up to it. Yeah. So I did a mix. And so that year there was one that we hadn't read beforehand, and it was there's a movie about Che Guevara called The Motorcycle Diaries. Yeah. This is very rare for me. I'd seen the movie, hadn't read the book. Usually I make myself read the book first. I made the assumption that it was like, look, no offense, it was a horrendous book. It was just really, really hard to read.
In terms of how it was written?
Yeah. So it was, I can't even remember. So there was him and his mate who he was riding around on a motorcycle with. Don't ask me his name, it's too long ago. But I think it was them and did they have an author that helped them? Maybe they didn't. It was just a book written about stuff, and people hated it. Like, it was very short, but it was really funny discussion because we literally got there and did anybody like it? Nope. Did anybody finish it? Like, maybe one person finished it. Yeah, so I realised that we were probably just biting off a bit more than we could chew, trying to make it,
that's fair.
For everyone. So if we did it again, we'd probably just have to rethink, like, what actually would it?
Yeah, what does it look like?
Would it be? Yeah. But it was fun.
I feel like you should just choose one and say, this is what we're doing if you want to join book club.
Yeah, but that was it. That was it. We did 5 books. We did one for each day. Every morning a different book. I told you, we bit off more than we could chew.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Wild.
I think you probably could start with one.
Maybe two. But then people could pick one and come on a certain day.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's because you wanted to be so inclusive, but then just like you're saying, then it turns into bigger than Ben-Hur.
It was bigger than Ben-Hur. Yeah. And then the next year, people were like, are you going to do it again? I'm like, oh, I don't think so.
You went too hard, and then you're like, oh.
We did. That's it. Exactly. We went too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I reckon you should just pick one and say, hey, you guys, I'm reading this book.
Yeah.
And if you want to join, come and join us on Tuesday or whatever, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, Lewis is trying to see if we can get a bookstore at Wickaway.
Oh,
that's a cool idea.
Yeah, because our mate's down at Bega. He runs a bookshop.
Yeah.
And he could just bring up a little stall.
We used to have a stall at the factory at Waratah Street from your grandparents' bookshop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And the other thing they would do, like, it was just gold. They would, they were basically our go-to. Like, if I would say I need a book about something, and they would bring me like 5 or 6 books and say, hey, look at these and see which one you want. Like, yeah, that was awesome.
Salt and Light Bookstore?
Salt and Light Bookseller.
Salt and Light Bookseller is Matt's
in Bega.
bookstore down in Bega.
I went to Symbio with Matt from Bega on Tuesday. And
did you?
Josiah and Jabish came. And I didn't realise this until after. It was Josiah. I mean, I sort of probably should have realised because it's very small, but it was Josiah's first zoo trip.
Oh, cute.
I was like, yay, that's a milestone.
Good to be part of this.
That's really fun.
That is really fun.
Well, Lewis realised that Yannick hadn't been.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm dropping so many names. Apologies to people who aren't regular parts of Sorrowvale or even Sorrowvale Late Night because,
it's very specific.
Very specific. But anyway, and they mentioned it on the weekend and I went, I'm free on Tuesday. Well, actually, I had something I had to move, but I was able to move that thing.
I'll move it for the zoo.
I will move it for the zoo. And we went to Symbio.
It's kind of cool that we've started talking about books. I want to ask you, what's your favourite book series?
Nothing. I can't.
Oh, I can't pick one.
I am, like favourite anything. I don't do. Really? Okay. I don't even have a favourite colour.
Do you do tier lists? Like, do you rank? Do you rank stuff? No.
I don't like listening. The other thing I really don't like is when people say rate something from 1 to 10. I struggle so much with that. I'm like, I don't know. Like,
I think.
And what does it mean to me? And what does it mean to? I
don't like 1 to 10 either.
This totally explains why the book club became such a big thing because you're like, I need to have the right book and I need to
Yeah, I can at certain areas there are certain ones that I really loved for different reasons. Like, my all-time favourite kids book is Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah,
and I can quote about half. I can't do the whole thing, but I can quote about half of it because it's only a kids book.
But it isn't. It's one of the classics. Like, it's.
Well, I actually was able to when I did English at uni. There was a subject called children's literature, and I studied it. Awesome. And it, sometimes studying a book can kill it. Like, I loved The Hobbit as a kid, and then in year 7 we studied it, and I had to have a break for a bit from rereading it because I don't want to study it. Like, it was okay, but I feel like if you love a book and then you study it, it can be not great. But if you don't like a book, sometimes studying it makes it better. But Wild Things, like, I always thought it was a really cool book. And it's not like I remember reading it as a kid. Like, I know I did, but I just have always thought it was and Maurice Sendak's he's really subversive in his kids' stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's way too detailed to go into here. But I thought he was a very interesting kids author because he doesn't talk down to kids and he doesn't moralise. He just has fun. Anyway,
that's cool. That's very, very cool.
You don't like ranking?
Oh, no, I find the 1 to 10 really hard because it doesn't actually mean anything.
That's why I don't like it. It's like
just
don't make me make a call about something that doesn't. Yeah. What does it mean?
Yeah, like when you rate a book, there needs to be reasons why it can be in those certain levels, which is why I like tier lists a lot. Like because what that does is you're not actually necessarily saying this book's great. You're just comparing books.
Yeah.
Like you're just going in this list. I think this one's fabulous, and I don't think this one's very good. Yeah. Like, and that's kind of how it. So at least there's comparisons happening there.
Yeah. But it's not something I've ever gotten into.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a newspaper in France called L'Equipe, and it's like a sports newspaper, and they do rating for football players in a match, and they're notoriously hard. Like hardly anyone ever gets a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
But they're like, if you get a 3, you're like, oh, you were just like average.
Wow.
So like as it gets higher, it's like even less likely to get it. Rather than, you know how sometimes if you were like rating players, it'd be like, oh, he was okay, he was a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
They were like, that's a 3 or a 2.
Wow.
So you get like a 1, and it's like you're really bad. But if you get a 0, it's like atrocious. Like shouldn't be on the pitch kind of thing.
Unreal.
It's a different way of looking at it. When everyone's like, oh, I'll just put it at 6.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? But yeah, I mean. So Wild Things Little Kid, like picture book. Although since then there have been such amazing ones. Like so there's kids books now that I love that weren't around when I was a kid.
We've talked about Ruby Red Shoes, for example.
Ruby Red Shoes is beautiful.
Yep.
All the Oliver Jeffers stuff. Like
what are those ones?
He does like I'm so bad with names. Stuck, the one about all the things in the tree and the kids stuck. So there's one called Moose, I think it's called. He does the ones about the penguins. Anyway, they're really
the 366 penguins.
No, not that.
That one.
Not that.
That was a funny one.
Is it up and down and they're very, very simple. I also love John Klassen. He does the hat books. Like I've lost my hat or where's my hat, and they're so funny. They're just really clever. And that thing of kids' books where the words and the pictures both tell the story, and one or the other doesn't. Yeah. You need both.
I was going to say, like, the illustrations are actually possibly more important to how they fit with the story with children's books.
Well, the hat ones is like somebody's hat's been stolen, and you know from the pictures who's stolen the hat, but the words, they don't know who's stolen the hat.
Oh, that's
anyway,
cool. It's like that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
They're very, very fun.
That's very fun.
I love stuff like that.
Well, here's a great segue. So we were talking about a children's book on the last podcast.
You were.
You also have brought a number of mementos.
I have.
Which include, we talked about Lauren Redmond's HSC major project, which was the backdrop for the last episode. You have a small... Is that a segment of that, or is it, what would you call it, a spin-off? I don't know what you would call that.
Well, so this was a gift when Sadie and I got married from Lauren, and so she's written Fiona and Stephen down the bottom, and that little picture she's drawn is a little girl and a little boy. That I drew that picture. We were back in the days of you couldn't afford to invite everyone to your wedding. And now it's a fairly commonplace thing to have a morning tea or an afternoon tea where everybody who comes to your wedding ceremony can stay around. It wasn't so common back then, but we really wanted to do that. So we had our wedding invitation. And the other thing is sometimes people have something that looks similar for both, which is fine, but I feel like that's a little bit confusing sometimes. So for us, we had our wedding invitation, which was square. It had blue. It was completely different. And then I got a whole bunch of yellow paper, and created and did a little thing. And I literally hand wrote it with a texter, and it was Fee and Sadie would love you to come. And it basically said everything they needed to know to come to the wedding and the afternoon tea. And we just handed them out at church to everybody who wanted to come.
Lovely.
And it gave them the details they needed. And I drew a little picture, and this little boy and girl is like, Lauren has drawn that little boy and girl picture. So the boy's got like full corkscrew curls, because that's Sadie. And the girl is just a fairly generic girl that's supposed to be me. But that's what I did. So she did this, but so because it was in year 12 and she'd just done this, and because we were getting married and like as a house, new family, so she created one for us.
That's so cool.
So it's separate to her major work, but it's in the same style and vein as her major work.
And as we spoke about last week, it was done with inks.
Yeah, well, people were saying with the Forgetful Prince, like, oh wow, we didn't know Lauren could draw. And I'm like, not only do I know she could draw, but that the color palette, everything is so indicative of what she was doing. So that's obviously something that's very much coming from her, and her, like, her choices as a creative. Yeah. Anyway, beautiful.
Yeah. No, that's really, really cool.
And it's related to you getting married.
Yes.
And we kind of finished last episode.
Yeah.
I had to go back and listen to it. About how that's a picture from when you got engaged. And but Ethan is in that photo.
That's right.
And Ethan's also here on this podcast.
Here. Yes. And Ethan wasn't here. It was we were with Brayden last time. So yeah, little baby Ethan. Sorry, I should put it there. You can probably, I don't know if you can see that very well.
We'll do it.
Should be able to.
You can do a picture. But yeah. So
I'm in the corner.
In the corner with your little Peggy in your tummy.
Yeah. Hanging out.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So hang on.
And then Adam and Joe are there.
I'm like, if this is 99, I'm 1, if that.
Yeah. So this is 25 years ago.
So you were born in September, and then we got engaged in January, and we got married.
Yeah.
He's less than 1.
Yeah, I was just looking at the date. If that's the 11th or the 9th, I'm not even 1 yet when we got married.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So there's is that 25 years ago? How old are you now? 26?
I'm turning 26 this year.
There you go.
25.
25 years ago.
Yeah. So that's how we're going to have our 25 anniversary in September. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Like, I'm like, I don't know.
Something fun.
We'll probably do something.
We'll find something to do.
We'll do something, but we won't do anything massive. I don't think. I don't know.
So I think that's a good starting. I think we have talked about Sadie a little bit. Can you tell us something else about Sadie? I can't remember because Matt made the joke on the last episode that we were going to get up to part 71 of your podcast. No, we're here on 25 years later, part 71. What? Tell us what you really like about Sadie.
You've already asked this. It's in the first one.
Yeah,
Braden
I think Braden asked it actually. Now
Braden
asked
me that, and he asked me what I didn't like and what I did like. It was hilarious. And my didn't like has not changed. That stupid skate wax.
We went out for dinner for community group on Monday, and I said, "Oh, how you been, man?" And he's like, "Yeah, good." I was talking to Sadie, and then I said, "Did you go for a skate today?" And he's like, "Yeah."
I don't mind him skating.
He kills it. The dude's 50 and he's like still out there ripping it up.
Like, it's really, really funny. So I had a funny thing with my neck, and I went so free. I had it for ages, and part of this year and timing changing a bit on my to-do list was just need to go to a physio. Anyway, it's a funny long story of connections with workplaces and my sister, and because I'd seen a physio a couple of times in my life, but not with any regularity. And she'd seen this guy she thought was really cool. I'm like, cool, yeah, I'll give him a try. In the meantime, Sadie has seen physios for like ages, and he had a really bad thing with his back that he was really regularly sorting that out, and was told by people that he would never skate again, by the way, which is yeah. And the reason he went to this particular physio that he was going to at the time was this guy's like, no, like. And he was involved in like NRL players, that sort of stuff, and he'd seen people with similar things.
Like,
and he's like, if I can get them back there, like I can. He's like, you have to do what I tell you to do. And Sadie went, okay. And like he is like so disciplined with his exercises and stuff like that. Like he's really good with that sort of stuff. So was highly motivated. So, but that guy has now actually moved into a different area, not physio anymore. So in the last recent weeks, I've seen this physio a couple of times, and now I'm doing a Pilates class with them, which is cool because, like, I'm very similar to Stewie. No offense to anyone, I'm not going to do yoga. Anyway, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but Pilates doesn't have the spiritual elements that Yeah. And it's also related to dance, which is the only sort of sport type physical thing that I've ever really loved.
We need to get in that.
Sorry?
Well, continue this story, but then we need to get and talk about dance stuff.
Yeah, we can do that. So Sadie's like, I might go and see your physio. So from my sister to me, so this week he went to see the physio that I've been seeing, and he's just really lovely, this guy. And he came in yesterday when I was at my Pilates class. He's like, I met your lovely Steve and everything. I'm like, that's really cool. Anyway,
Steve.
I know, he called him lovely Steve. I thought that was so cute. He's one of those guys, like I've done a group class of Pilates and there's people there who are injured or on CTP and, they haven't got the most happy affect. Like life is a bit tricky at the time. Yeah. And he just brings a bit of sunshine. So it's really, I'm watching him and going, I don't know, I really enjoy seeing how people create something. And I think it's really important in our churches. And it's something that we've talked about a lot. And like a lot of people who come to church get really excited about Stu and how joyous he is about Jesus. And I hear people say that a lot. They go, oh, wow, that's really... And when you see that in a non-Christian space, I'm always really interested in where it's coming from. So I'm observing this a little bit and going, that's interesting. You're creating that community in that. It is a bit of a third space for people, I think, these classes, because I'm sort of here or there. I've done a couple at different times, but there's people who are regularly in this sort of set time and, maybe for a season while they're getting over an injury. But anyway, the reason I thought of that was because he's like, oh, Stephen, I said, yeah, he gets injured because he does stuff and I've got issues because I don't do stuff. And he laughed and he's like, yeah, I'm a bit in his boat. And I'm like, yeah, I know you are. Yeah. which is sort of funny. So yes, Sadie has regularly made use of a physio service. But
fair enough.
Literally for the first time in my life, I've run out of our private health physio thing. Oh, yeah. Which wasn't heap, but I'm like, he keeps on saying, have you got private health? I'm like, I do, but I run it out. Because they were able to use it for the stuff that I've done.
You need a higher allowance or whatever. I can't remember what it's called.
There are some health funds now that don't have sublimits, and I'm like, I really should change to one of them because we are in a health fund that has sublimits, and there are so many things that I would never, ever touch, ever. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
Whole thing.
We'll start a financial podcast.
You wanted to talk about dancing?
Dancing.
Yeah.
That's something that hasn't come up.
It hasn't.
And I would love you to tell us about it. So, when did you start doing dancing?
Before I went to school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Preschool.
I know that very clearly because I had to change dance schools when I went to school. So I originally went to a dance school called Ansell's. It was in Gymea.
Sounds like a.
Well, Joanne Ansell was the.
Oh, okay.
What do you call the? Oh gosh, I've forgotten the name.
The director.
The person who ran the studio. There's a name for it.
It sounds like a kind of they make Band-Aids. Ansell's.
Well, don't let me forget.
I went to Ansell's Dancels and I was like, that would be a really funny name for it.
No,
what's
not
a
Ansell's
Dancel going to work?
I don't know, but it'd be really funny.
Yeah. Isn't it? I think Ansell's might be a brand.
I think it is. It's a brand of some sort of stationery thing, I think, as well.
Oh, stationery.
I think I've seen it on.
I'm
just picturing. But anyway, it was
Ansell's.
So I went there, but then, and this is funny, I was talking to my mum about this not that long ago, and she had forgotten this part of the story, but it was very significant to me because I'd gone to a dance class there, and then when I started school, so I went to kindergarten, I was at Kirrawee Primary, but a lot of the kids in the dance school were at Gymea Bay Primary, and the timing, schools, bell times are a little bit different.
Yeah, which is always weird to me. But
it is weird. Yeah, I don't know. But so without any times being in my head, obviously, anymore, Gymea Bay finished school before Kirrawee or around about the same time, but was a bit closer. So the time for my kindy age group dance class, I couldn't make it anymore. So I would have had to leave school early to get there, which is not a thing. So then we had to look around for another dance school, and we ended up at Farrell's, which was based in Caringbah. And that had different times. And I went to Farrell's for many years. And that was another traumatic leaving was, maybe year 8. Farrell's was an amazing dance school. I really, really enjoyed it. But it was a serious dance school where there were the good people up the front sort of stuff. And in the end, my mum didn't like the culture of not everybody being. So she wanted us to change. So we went to another dance school called Richardson's, which was a little bit not as serious. I want to say like it was a bit more lame. Anyway. But the problem was they didn't, the dance styles that they specialised in, like were more into, were not the ones that I was. So the thing that I loved was jazz. And I say that now, if you're a dancer now, not what you think of, because what people call jazz now is more Broadway-ish. It's actually changed over time. Jazz was just like, because there was no contemporary, there was no lyricals. It was basically, it was ballet, jazz and tap.
Yeah.
So they were the three. And I did all three.
Yeah.
But jazz was like, ballet, I didn't have the body or the technique to do it. Like I'm not flexible enough to get down into a low plie. Like, I was not built to be a ballerina.
Can you still tap?
Well, interestingly, I had a massive gap where I didn't do dance, and then went back somehow. I think it was, you know what? It could have actually been coming out of changing churches, which we'll potentially talk about at some point. I was just looking for, something that I've always loved, need to do this. And I don't know how I found out about this girl. It was a girl called Emma who was doing a dance school out of just like a hall in Sans Souci. It was really small. And I went there to do like jazz, and she did like funk and hip hop. Like literally, it was so small that there were some weeks that I would rock up, because it was adult classes only. Yep. You'd rock up and it was all casual, so you'd be the only one there.
Yeah, wow.
So it was lovely. I'd chat with her, and she's
that's super nice.
Yeah, really, really lovely. She still runs a dance school down in Tarrant Point, which I've tried a couple of times, but the timetable just doesn't match up with my evening commitments at the moment for the things that I would do. And she's now got like, beginners, intermediate, advanced. Like,
that's so cool.
It's much bigger than it was, which is lovely. But when I went back to her, her great love was tap. And so I would do this jazz class and then stick around and do the tap one. And I was like, this is amazing. I love tap. I'd never loved it because it wasn't Farrell's thing. And I think that is a theme, I think, over the years when I've been in learning situations. If the person who is imparting it loves it, then you love it. So like completely different tack, but in Bible college, one of my lecturers, Stephen Wren, loved the Old Testament. Now most people went to Bible college and that was not their favourite subject, but I was just like, wow, it was just so, you just wanted to go and you wanted to learn because he was so passionate about
that's really cool.
his subject. And other subjects, like I remember having some lectures in Romans, which is amazing, but the lecturer was probably passionate in themselves, but their presentation was not such. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
Which is funny,
despite how awesome Romans is. Like,
yeah. So I do still have a pair of tap shoes, and just this week, my niece, my eldest niece, has just started. She's just bought some tap shoes because she does dance. But how's this, right? Many, many years later, I stopped doing dancing when I was in high school, and the reason I stopped was it got to the point where people who were doing that dance school I was at, and probably elsewhere in that age, people who were doing it wanted to be dancers and wanted to be ballerinas, and I didn't. And it was just really competitive, and it was just really bitchy, and it wasn't a very nice environment anymore.
Okay.
So I'm like, I don't want to be in this environment of that. And I was never going to be a dancer. I just loved dancing.
Yeah.
It was really fun. And in the years since, we've had when over different times, some of the girls who are a bit more proactive have done stuff at Week Away, and I'm in. I love it. It's great fun. So I would love to do a dance class, and that's something I've been talking to this physio about. He's like, it's good to do regular stuff. I'm like, the thing I want to do is dance, but unless I literally go into Sydney Dance Company, which is in the Wharves at Dixon Road, which I like, that is a bigger commitment that I'm willing to make at the moment with my time.
What do you think the appeal of dancing was? Why I asked that question.
It's physical and it's brain. And the music, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I love that. The memorizing the steps was really cool as well. And it's creative and technique, which is one of the things I love about pottery, which is something that I've jumped into as an adult.
It's creative and technique.
Yeah. And you can go either way. It's the mix of the two.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay.
Yeah, I like that about dance. And so that's why like people will say, "Oh, do a Zumba class or do an aerobics class."
Zumba, so fun.
That when Zumba started, I did try Zumba, and I'm like, I am so bored because we do the same thing every week. It's so boring.
But it is a workout and dancing at the same time, Fee.
Yeah. Yeah. It's moving your body, but it's not. Yeah. It just like coming in and going. My brain needs to be so switched on because I need to remember these moves, and also I never did solo stuff, so it was always in a group. So you were letting, and like, you know, it was pretty like Farrell's for what it was pretty high level. Like we were doing a Steadfast at the Opera House and all over the place. Like, yeah. And like when my nieces then went to dancing and I would go to their dance concerts, they are now at a dance school, which is like next level awesome, doing really good stuff. They were at a dance school that was a little bit more, I would go to the concerts and I'd be like, do not put that dance on the stage. It's not ready. The kids are sloppy. They don't like this one here is watching that other one because she doesn't know the moves. Yeah. And also they would do this thing where they would have their hair in high ponytails and their hair would be flipping around. I'm like, that's just messy. It doesn't look good on the stage. Like, and it was, I loved seeing my nieces, but I was like, there is nothing impressive about this dance. And I'm thinking, you know, 20, 30 years ago, my dance school was doing, like, this is not that they can't do better. And actually there was a funny story with my niece. She changed dance schools because she was at the Stedfords and things, and she saw this other dance school and she's like, she just got quite upset. She said to my sister, I just want to be in dances like that. And that was the beginning of the journey for her changing dance schools. Yeah, cool. And she has now left mainstream schooling and is in year 9 and is doing, like, she's doing a dance academy school.
Is she? That's so cool.
So similar to the style of like the Newtown Creative Arts thing where all your electives are that. So yeah, so year 9 you choose your electives. All 3 of her electives are dance, so that's what she does. Cool. And it's correspondent. It's really different, but she is really thriving and loving it. But that was a big family thing for that to sort of happen. But the other thing is, the ballet teacher at her current dance school is Miss Joanne Ansell. I kid you not.
Whoa.
I kid you not.
Ansell's still dancing.
Oh gosh. Hey, I was right. Look, Ansell make gloves.
Yeah, that's where I've seen the label.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Okay.
They make...
which is why
rubber
Ansell
gloves
had to coin the term dancel.
And
because
Ansell.
Because you want to get confused with the gloves.
It's nothing like flogging a dead horse.
Well, can I tell you something really funny? That actually has another weird thing because, like, so Miss Joanne Ansell, as you can imagine, is an older lady.
Yeah.
Yep. And she has these little chats with the girls at dancing. And my favourite story that my niece has told me was she told the girls how they all need to wear gloves.
Oh.
And especially when they're driving, so like their hands don't get aged. And
she's part of the empire.
She's
part of the Ansell empire.
I don't think she's going for rubber gloves. I think she's more going for, like, you know, your little white nice gloves. But yeah, Maya came home from dancing one time. She's like, Miss, and they call her, because the principal of her current, that's who is the principal of the dance school. The principal of her current dance school is a Joanne as well. Okay. So she is Miss Joanne Ansell. That's what they call her.
Right.
That's cool. It was this conversation where I'm like, hang on, is that? And Meg's like, yeah, it is. It's your old dance school teacher, Fee. So she taught me in kindy, and she's now teaching my niece in year 9.
Good on her.
Funny circles. Anyway, dancing. So dancing is lovely. I really liked it. Yep. Yeah, that was my Saturdays when I was a kid growing up. Go to Caringbah. There was a Homestead chicken. It was like a KFC Red Rooster. It was a different brand. It was Homestead.
Like a
and
chain.
It was next door, and we used to like dance for hours, go next door, like eat hot chips because we all needed like our
water link,
carb load.
Yeah.
Carb load. That's similar to like Lauralee.
That's actually a really good memory of hot chips, those hot chips there.
Dance chips.
And they also had Calippos when Calippos were a new thing. So we'd get a Calippo. Where was I the other? At
Calippos
youth.
And dance chips.
Last week,
that's what dance
we were on holidays. Anyway, the last week of term with youth, we had little mini Calippos. And I'm like, it takes me back to dancing. Yay. So yes.
Very cool.
Dancing is cool.
Yeah, hot chips after something that you've done, like Lauralee was saying, after church. Very cool.
Yeah, that was the go across the road thing. Yeah, I heard it talking about that. That was very, very cool. Got the particular connection.
Would it be churlish of me to say that I don't enjoy tap dancing? I find it annoying.
I think it's really cool.
Okay.
Good tap dancing is amazing. There's a lot of not so good tap dancing.
Well, Karen and I started watching a show on Amazon. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime, and it's like behind the scenes at is it Brent Street? Is that the famous dance school?
Yeah, Brent Street. So
even when the tap dancer was on that, I'm like,
my niece's current dance school, they're up like Brent Street are like a big competition for them because they're a good school. They're both good schools, and like when they go to a Stedford, it's like, ooh, Brent Street's going to be there. Wow, we're going to have to really work our butts off to compete against them. Yeah, they've got a very good name.
I think tap dancing is inherently silly. Like I think
maybe that's why. I think that's what no one else is doing this.
Yeah, I think it's inherently silly. But
like,
I think
where did that come from?
But that was what Tap Dogs did. They tried to make it not silly, and I think they did a really good job. Do you guys know Tap Dogs?
I know. I don't. But there's all blokes in blue singlets smashing bins and stuff.
Yeah.
Bin lids and
it basically made tap grunge and cool for boys. Yeah. So basically, no boys ever did tap.
Because that description does not sound
no
like anywhere near.
It was well coordinated.
Yeah.
However,
and there's been stuff since, but yeah, Tap Dogs was like it changed the entire way that people thought about tap. It was very influential in that regard.
There's just lots of like it was like tradies doing tap dancing.
Oh, okay.
Sure. And like even like these guys have got just metal beams and they go in between them stuff. They were very skilled. And like lots of balancing and all that stuff. And
so
even
it was
then
a combined.
I'm just like,
they were changing it and they were making it blokey because traditionally. I mean, you go back to like the old musicals where they do a little tap thing. It is fairly effeminate in the dance world, I suppose, back then.
Yeah.
Not to say that it wasn't skilled. It was still very skilled. And like there's stuff like Fred Astaire doing like some of it was soft tube, but some of it was tap. Like it's like incredible level of skill to do it, but it felt a little bit fluffy. Whereas Tap Dogs went, we're going to make this grungy.
Well, I think that's why I said inherently silly because it feels it is that it's a.
So me, it's a lot of unnecessary noise.
Well, all you're doing is tapping your feet, but you're just doing it in such a way that
in a highly coordinated.
And to be honest, like I think that dancing is inherently silly and
like coordinated, like
all of it, like if you look at dancing and you think about it for more than 3 seconds, like if you actually think about a move and for some reason why that looks good, I'm like I don't know why that works, but sometimes it works and sometimes it's inherently silly.
I watch my daughters do it, and I'm like, but they love it. I'm like, and I think there's a general...
Like, I love it. Like, I say that as dancing's super fun.
Yeah, but there's a general appeal for girls. I'm like, why do they like doing this so much? And I'm not saying that only girls can dance, but I find that quite interesting. It's like when I go and watch my Everly, especially middle daughter, dance, they just love it. They love being there. They love having a go at it.
And particularly like the very classic, like classical ballet, all the very famous ones, like the blokes are a really big part of it.
Absolutely.
As well. So, like there's the whole like little girls growing up doing dance, but it's really funny. A lot of dance schools have like the 1 or 2 boys. And that was the other thing about Tap Dogs. It created a thing of like a troop of boys dancing together. Whereas when I grew up, and still just in some ways that you'll have a dance school and there'll be all the girls and there'll be like the one boy in the middle sort of thing.
Totally.
Yeah. Like that's, that is what it is.
A lot more boys do dancing now. Like they do like hip hop and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So that style coming in has created something that's more appealing.
We've talked about dancing for quite a bit.
We have talked about dancing for quite a while.
Can you, why don't you pick a memento fee and then we can use that as the next thing to talk about. How does that sound?
Okay. Well.
Gosh, I feel like I've got you to rate them out of 10.
They're 2 things that are from a similar time but very different.
Perfect.
Okay, I'll show you this one first.
Okay. Now, if you're listening, do you want to describe it first?
Yes. So it is an image from an anime before we even knew the word anime, a Japanese style cartoon when I was a kid called Kimba, the White Lion, which, similar to my thoughts about Harry Potter, my thoughts about the Lion King were tainted by Kimba, the White Lion. And then we had the Lion King with Simba.
Oh.
Yeah. And Kimba the White Lion was the same sort of deal. Like anyway, there's
a whole bunch of stuff that lines up to.
There is a lot.
Is there a
stuff.
monkey in Kimba that's really funny?
Not specifically, no.
Doesn't matter. It's in your past now.
He is top tier.
He's one of the best Disney characters.
Yeah. I have very few clear memories of Kimba, but I do know was my favorite. And so, people would talk about cartoons. That was my favorite cartoon growing up. That sort of stuff. There were all these weird ones that and it was just just watching telly. So there was no nowadays you can source anything on the world. This was just what came on the telly. But there was a bunch of ones in this sort of style, and they obviously had like a Japanese sort of background to them, and they would be in English. There was another one, I can't remember what it was called, but there's this little caveman boy that we really loved as well. But Kimba the White Lion, I loved that. So this dates back to so the image is a little white lion jumping out of like a porthole in a ship, and you can see, and that's his mum inside. So he escapes.
I see.
Yeah. Anyway, that's part of the story. But somebody knew that I loved Kimba. Found this. This was in my pigeonhole one day when I was working. So I had a staff pigeonhole at Gymea Anglican Church. This was in my pigeonhole one day when things were not going so well at that time, and it was just a little.
So someone knew that you liked Kimba.
Yeah. Which limits the field.
Right.
I probably,
But they've
could have. There's a certain number of people who it could have been.
Yeah. So you don't know who it was?
I don't know who it was to this day.
That's
it was just
cool,
so literally, I would have to every time I would once a week I would check my pigeonhole, and there was a time where there were little things, and this was one of the things, and I'm like, oh, that's really really.
Have
cool.
they got that framed for you as well?
I don't know. I don't know if they found it somewhere. Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, it does say Caringbah framing, so I think they've found it and they've framed it
or framed it for you.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
That's really lovely.
And I don't know what this says.
We'll have to get Lewis to translate.
Yeah,
it for
we
us.
will. Anyway,
so
that's a really special memento of just somebody doing something.
Oh, you're going to try and do that. I wouldn't think that. I wouldn't see that and go, that's anime either. It's not the standard anime.
Well, again, I don't know. Is there another word for it, Ethan? Are you more up on the terminology than me?
I don't know, but it says Jungle Emperor.
Oh, Jungle Emperor. Yeah. There you go. And he was.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, so the theme song was Who's the King of Deepest, Darkest Africa? Kimba the White Lion is the one. So I could sing it, but I won't. Yeah. So that was the story of Kimba, Yeah, and all the jungle animals and. Deepest Africa. Who's the one who brought the jungle fame?
But yeah, it's great. It's very, very good.
The White Lion is the one. Yep.
So in that picture, did he get taken out of Africa, or he's on his way back to Africa?
No, I think that's the initial. This is really testing the memory because I haven't gone back and watched it since I was a kid. But it was the initial thing was they were poaching people, and then he got back. So even though he was the kid, he was the king because he's I don't know, maybe his dad got shot, but that's his mum there. So I think it's one of those horrible sort of horrible people do horrible things. The young animal prevails and then becomes king of the jungle.
Oh, it sounds like Lion King.
Strangely enough, Joel.
Strangely enough.
He goes into the jungle too, doesn't he?
So
Timon and Pumbaa are also very good Disney characters.
So why is that as significant as it is?
Kimba?
No, the getting that in your porthole
and the timing.
And the timing of it.
Yeah, okay. So I've said in the previous podcast, didn't have a Christian family, but sent me along to Sunday school. That was at Gymea Anglican, that was my church. And so was raised up into, first of all, volunteer ministry there, and then was encouraged to study and do paid ministry there, so to become part of the staff team. And the importance, I thought, of long-term low-key ministry, which is something that, obviously is a shared value that I have with Stu and others at Soulies. And also seeing different story to Stu's, but Stu saw everybody go. I didn't see everybody go, but I saw people above me go, people around me go, that sort of thing. So really wanted to be committed to my church, to the point where, I don't know if we talked about this with Saidi, but he had to come to my church for anything to happen. I actually prayed to God and I said, if you want me to have a boyfriend, then they're going to have to be at my church. Because I saw other people who had beautiful relationships, and again, nothing wrong with this, but they had a relationship with someone from another church, and that created a split and a divide, and then they had to decide, and I'm like, I never want to have to decide that maybe and I'm like, well, God, if that's your plan. And like Sadie did, he grew up at another church, and it was a whole bunch of circumstances that brought him to Gymea. So so that was something that was very important to me. And so had that thing of this is where I'm going to be. But at the same time, and in some levels of parallel and some levels of difference, when Stu and Matt left Gymea, and I also left the staff team within that period of time. I don't know what. Our journeys were different. I had also at the same time had a really hard time with scripture. So
just in terms of the kids?
No, in terms of the staff and the situation. So basically what had happened is I had a mix of head teachers at the schools I was working at. Kirrawee, I was pretty self-sufficient, to be honest, because by the time I went to Kirrawee, I'd done it at Gymea for a long time, and the system was a little bit different. There were teachers there that were helpful, but that was different. So Gymea, I always had a head teacher, and the way that the discipline system worked at Gymea was if something was not right in the classroom, you'd send them to the head teacher. And unfortunately, there was a period of time where I couldn't actually send kids to the head teacher because they would come back. The head teacher, I don't know. At what level do you say stuff?
The system wasn't working.
Helpful. The system wasn't working, and so kids were coming back worse. So the discipline and you have those lovely kids that want to be there. There's always kids that don't want to be there or want to cause trouble, and so the behaviour management was just getting next level.
Yeah.
So that was, in the end, the scripture board actually ended up sending sort of volunteers just to be another person in the room with me, which was great. So Jared Spring did it a couple of times. John Armour did it a couple of times. Just because they recognised that it was it was,
you needed someone else.
Yeah, it was very, very tricky because there was, just the staffing had changed, and I had a really good head teacher who had also struggled because she would be involved in things and then she would send it higher up, and then that wouldn't work. So that, every school is different, but that was a particular season where there just was no backup for that sort of stuff, and it was just getting really tricky. So that was going on, and Stu and Matt knew that. And so in that journey of the year 2011, I think it was, 2012, when...
2012, I think.
Yeah, was 2012 we started Soulies, but it was 2011 I think was when things...
Yeah, that makes
anyway,
sense.
I definitely might have my years wrong.
2011, you're right.
In that period of time, the other thing about scripture was, because there was a scripture board who was super supportive, but in terms of day by day on the ground, the youth ministry team at Gymea Anglican was my team in that So, and also like, you know, because Stu loves schools ministry, like they were always really interested. You know, Jai was doing the chip lunches and stuff like that as well. So there was a lot of connections there. So our staff, like our youth staff team meetings weren't like insulated to Guy Meir. It was about all the things that were happening, which included school.
Yeah.
So that was really my support network for that, which is beautiful and like amazing. So I could see that things weren't good for the guys, but they were loving me as their sister by not burdening me with stuff that wasn't good. And there's a good 6 months or more where I just couldn't work out what was going on. Like, and this again, what do I say? Like, you know, it's their own stories. I could see people were really not themselves and upset, but I didn't know why. And one of the really beautiful things is in the fallout of that and everything that happened, and you know, at a period of time later, the one thing that Stu says very, very regularly is like, the biggest mistake I ever made for you. I mean, you know, Stu likes talking about biggest and bests and worsts and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm like, what's the other biggest? And he looks at me and I'm like, yeah, because there's other biggest. So that's okay. But he recognises, he regrets not telling me what was going on for them as stuff, because, you know, I was in the youth staff team. Stu and Matt were assistant ministers, so like what was going on was affecting them very differently. So he really regrets not telling me, and I'm like, but I don't. Yes, obviously that was really hard, but he didn't know how much I knew, you know.
Totally.
And I was just like, I can't work this out. Like, why isn't Stu himself? You know, that sort of stuff. So and then everything came to a head. And I think Stu said in Berea and other places, you know, like he'd said that he was going to stay forever, and then unless he was asked to leave, and pretty much that's how things went.
Yep.
Short version. I was not, but because of what had been going on with Scripture, I had actually recognised that I was not in a good headspace for Scripture, and it actually was infecting my youth ministry. So I had actually offered my resignation to the Scripture Board and to Guy Meir Anglican. And both workplaces had said, we think this is a season fee, have a term off. And let's just see how that goes. So that term off was when the meeting happened where Stu and Matt both consequently resigned. So you can imagine it was just this, what's the opposite, like a perfect storm that's an imperfect storm? Like
a storm.
I say it was a perfect storm, but not very perfect. It all happening at once. We also moved house around about that time. Sadie was retraining as a teacher, so
tumultuous? Is that how you
it was very tumultuous. And one of the things that the Scripture Board did, which was beautiful, was they encouraged me to see a Christian counsellor just about all this stuff. And that was a bit of a long story, but the person I saw, she was the one who actually pointed, she's like, Fee, there's it. Like, the wall has been pulled out from under your feet in all these different areas. No wonder you are struggling.
Yeah, of course.
And that was like, oh, wow, you know.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So she was super helpful, because the first person I saw was more like a relational sort of counsellor, and she was saying like, how's this affecting you inside? And I'm like, well, of course it is, because I'm feeling crap. That's you could solve that. That's not going to solve it. That's not. And then through a bit of a connection, I ended up with this other lady. So I'm going to call it Margaret Fuller. Amazing. Such a wonderful lady, worked for Anglicare, was down in Wollongong. So I would drive down to Wollongong to see her. I don't even remember how regular it was. I had a number of sessions with her, but she particularly worked with people that had been like in pastoral ministry where things had been hard. And so
that's cool. Good on her.
Yeah, she was really, really good. And that was one of those weird God incidences where I'd initially heard about her, had inquired, her books were closed, and then I don't even remember how this happened, but she then contacted me and like all through her office, they went, oh, we think you're someone who she could see. Yeah, wow. So I reckon there must have been, you know, there was
somebody said something
somewhere, and she was super helpful for me, because she was trying to solve the actual issue, which is like, what do I do with being in a situation where I don't know what I'm doing with ministry? and there's teams that aren't working. So yeah, so I was in that term. So that was all announced. The guys were leaving, and so that was term 4, and then I was due to come back at the beginning of the year. So I then made the decision at the end of that term to not go back to scripture ministry, because at the same time I'd made the decision that I was going to leave my church. And I'm like, you can't actually, well, you can. I did not feel it was the right thing to be a scripture teacher who did not have a church.
Yep.
You know, that was really helpful. So I resigned from both those roles. But then I had a further decision to make, which was, do I leave my church?
Yeah, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Again, what do you say, what do you not say? I had come to a position where I did not trust or respect the senior person at that church at the time. And I actually put this to them. So this is not something I suppose that's inappropriate to say. I put to them that I am now in a situation where, due to the amazing privilege I've had of being involved in youth and kids for many years, I now have, like, not just kids, but a significant portion of the adult congregation of our church who I have been a leader of them. And I'm not currently a leader of them, but that is not something you can ever take lightly. Like, you have a level of responsibility. And I said, so now I am in an impossible situation, because do I stay and be silent, and by my silence show that I am trusting and respecting that? Or do I talk about how I don't trust and respect that? Neither. I have to go. And and that person said, yeah, well, I think, yep. I said, if there's any other way, and they ended up saying no. But that was through a very long and tumultuous thing of, not being treated very well. So that was my journey. So, yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
About that? Like, you're saying it was tumultuous. There's a lot going on in your life. What about, how did it impact your faith?
That's a really cool question.
And how did God, the titles of these podcasts that we call is it Let God Work Through You. How do you think God worked through you at that time?
I don't know if this is like, many people were concerned at the time, and a couple of people, like, after I left, like, asked to go and have a coffee with me, which was really delightful, and just wanted to just check I was all right, and not necessarily the people who I spent lots of time with, just people who had, people who had been Bible study leaders in the past, people with church connections. But one of those people was Rod Harding, who was the senior pastor at the time at Sutherland Anglican, and was the chairman of the scripture board.
All right, cool.
Okay. And he wanted to meet me for a coffee. We went to meet for a coffee. It's called Howling something now at Kirrawee, but whatever it was called something else.
It's not Howling
not even Howling Forest.
Is it moved?
It's
something else.
Anyway. It's an Italian cafe now.
Is it?
So. Yeah.
Wow. When that cafe first opened, I can't remember what its name was, but that was where we met. And he was just concerned because he'd been in ministry for a long time, and he'd seen people go through something similar to me, leaving that paid ministry and leaving the church and stuff, and that had then turned to leaving their faith. And that was what people, and I remember just having this conversation a number of times over and gone, no, God's cool. Like, people are crap, and isn't that what the Bible tells us anyway? Yeah. And that was genuinely my response. I was not, it was really, really hard and really awful, but it didn't make me distrust God. If anything, it made me go, well, God, of course you're right. Yes, we're a sinful bunch, and we can sin in all sorts of ways. However, at the same time, I feel like, how do I say this? I had made a decision that I needed to leave my jobs, which which were amazing, which I loved, because I wasn't in the right place to do them. So it was really, really hard and really, really sad. Yeah.
And so at that time, you're receiving a picture of something that someone knows. It's a very niche part of you to know about, to frame it and then send it to you. It's like, Actually,
people knew that things were really tough, and just
Well,
like it was, and like love bombs was something that I started in SALT back in the day, and to then get love bombed.
Yeah,
like it's like, and this was people who
probably
were,
by
who
someone
were,
you
who
did
had
give a
grown.
love
It was
bomb.
people who'd grown up through SALT who we taught about love bombing, and then they love bombed me.
Yeah,
like how, like that is just like wow, how cool that God can put something on your heart, and you can share it.
Yeah.
And then it's something that gets taken up and run with. And I mean, people do nice things for each other, even though they don't do love bombs or hadn't gone to SALT. I'm not saying that, but it was me, seeing that beautiful connection in ministry, and just the privilege of being able to speak into people's lives about things that we can do. Yeah.
And I think you said, talking about the things about Guy Meir, is that it wasn't God, it was people.
It was people.
But there are situations where it's in a very in a kind of negative aspect. But I think on the flip side is that the receiving that picture of Kimber is like what God can do as well through people, right?
And I need to show you my other one because this is
perfect.
This is my last little show and tell. So at the same time, so I mentioned in one of the other podcasts about the group of girls that I got to lead when they were in Year 9, and I was a Rev leader down at St Tim's, all that sort of stuff. So that Bible study finished when they were in Year 12. I didn't lead them as a group anymore. We also sort of split up into different things. But we used to still sort of, many of them were still at church, not all of them. But when this all happened, we're trying to work out what it was. We think it might have been Karen Roach's birthday, but the girls said we're going out for someone's birthday, and it was their sneaky way of getting me out, and it wasn't for someone's birthday. It was because, so another little part of the story. The guys, when they finished up at Guy Meir, had farewells. I didn't have a farewell. And that was my own call because I said, I don't want someone to speak at my farewell, because if it's my farewell and they say something that I don't think's right, I will get up and contradict them, and that will not help anyone. So I said, so if you will do me a farewell, and they said no, that would need to happen. So I said, okay, I don't want a farewell.
Right.
And that was my choice. But the girls were devastated. They're like, Fee, you need a... So this was their way of giving me a farewell.
That's so lovely.
That's cool. They made a cake. And they did, those little like the icing people? They made a little icing person, and to this day, I was talking to them about it not that long ago, a couple of the girls, and they're like, it was so dodgy. I'm like, it doesn't matter, it was so cool. We need to find a picture of that cake. I'm sure there's a picture somewhere. But they made a cake, and we all went to a little restaurant. It's a sushi place now, but up at Miranda, another place, I think it was Thai at the time. And we rocked up there, and they said, this is what it is. We all want to just say thank you. And they gave me this beautiful card that they'd all written, not just a from so-and-so, but solid stuff on it. And they also gave me this. So it's like a little set of frames, and they had found photos and put them in it. So I'll show you them one by one and describe them. The littlest one that fits in small is me. It goes off I'm doing a one-way, and I'm wearing my Jesus bead that I didn't actually wear today, but I wore in the last podcast, my old school Jesus beads. And they knew the dates. I'm so bad with dates. The venue, August 2004.
Wow,
okay.
So that is me at a dance party. I'm also, you can't see it, but that's, for a little while, we used to go to an embroidery place up at Westfield that had like a little, if you were in a sporting team, they'd have your logo and you get it put on. Yeah. We had a Soul Revival logo.
Awesome.
And we used to all go up and buy our own jumpers and things, and then just get the Soul Revival logo. This T-shirt had the Soul Revival logo on it. I remember it. I wore it for ages. So there's that one. Then the next one is a picture of Sadie and I at Julie and Tom's wedding.
Yep.
So that's 2002. So the first one was a picture of me, the Jesus beads. Second one is Sadie and I. The third one is just an outing to a cafe with that Bible study, and they've just written Cafe Mons Cronulla, and they obviously don't know the year. I don't know the year either, but like, wow, the girls are pretty young. People that Soli's people currently would know, potentially Julie, if you know Julie and Tyne Eamon, who were at Soli's but now in Orange. Anna Ware is in the picture, and Kath Breen is in the picture. There's the other girls as well who aren't involved in Soli's at the moment. But that's just a picture of us at the cafe. Beautiful. And then this one is also dated. This is 1999. So this is the year Sadie and I were engaged but not married. So in 1999 we got engaged at the beginning of the year and we got married in September of that year. And this was the week away of that year at Illaroo Farm.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful sepia photo. And it's not everybody from that group, but it's the ones who were there. So there's Mel Bostock, Anna Ware, Karen Roach, Julie Inman, Kath Breen, Kath Stolder and me. And we're standing next to the big old wooden cross that they had down there.
I remember that.
Yeah. So that was the gift that they gave me, basically to say, Fee, like, they were saying, we don't feel like you've been appreciated and we want to appreciate you, which was so beautiful and such a lovely gift from them.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a few cat hairs on this feet.
Surprisingly. Where would a cat hair come from in my household?
I can't imagine. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it also speaks to, though, Feed, to the amount of time that you invest in other people.
Well, again, I think I've said in the other ones, it's a privilege. If somebody lets you walk alongside them, what a privilege that is. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
So wow, Catherine looks young in this one.
It's 1999.
Yeah.
They were in year 12.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Looks a bit like a band photo, actually. This one
does look a bit like a band photo.
Because we're really cool.
There's a lot of members.
So cool.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That jumper that I'm wearing was my dad's old camping jumper. Like I don't know.
That's awesome.
It's a pretty bodgy jumper. Yeah.
It's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Well, I'm pretty sure that was in my Banaba Road era where I was living out of home. I was teaching scripture, but the scripture board got donations periodically and the finances weren't, super tight. So like I wouldn't get paid for months and then they'd get a donation and they'd back pay me. And I was working at a cafe in Westfield just to get a regular income. My parents had moved overseas. We weren't paying big rent. Like we were renting off it's connection through church. Somebody it was a grandparent had gone into care in that house. So we were renting that house. So yeah, but it was definitely penny pinching at the time. So yeah, I remember buying a pair of boardies at Kmart that were boys' boardies because they were cheaper. The girls' ones had only just come out and they were only in the funky shops. Yep. I'm like, yeah. So I had these funny old blue boardies that I wore for years. Yeah.
Maybe in a way to wrap up, I feel like we're going to have to do a part 4.
How long have we been? I don't know.
Or over an hour.
We're chatting for a hot minute.
Hot minute. I don't understand that saying.
Do we want to leave it? I don't know. We have to leave it there if it's time.
Oh, well, no, I was going to ask you just in terms of she said that you did choose to leave Gomi. You and Sadie, I should say.
Yeah.
And a number of us did that. What was your thinking in terms of after, what church do I go to next? Because that would lead next episode. We can talk about planning soul revival, but I just want to hear what your thoughts were in terms of what do you do next. Because the reason I ask is because I think you're very thoughtful about those things. So that's why. So learn, people listening.
We were not part of that 30 that planted. We were alongside that 30, but we were never included those numbers. And there were gatherings at Stu and Lou's that we weren't involved in and stuff. So I didn't know if I could be Anglican anymore, to be honest. And that conversation that we were talking about before with Rod Harding, he told me a story in that conversation about going to a church, and it was such a long-winded thing. It's probably too long now. Probably the shortest version is he had visited a church of somebody he knew. The day he had visited, the senior pastor had got up and had actually announced to the congregation that he was going to have a period of leave, And the reason was, oh no, was he there? Oh, maybe he wasn't there. Maybe he heard about it later. I'm trying to shorten the story and I'm screwing up the details. Anyway, Rod's wife, Cherie, had passed away. And part of his story around that, which he had shared to a number of people, was that he was in ministry, he had poured himself out for ministry, and he had always told himself that when they retired, he would pay Cherie back. And she passed away. And that was really, really hard for him. He had told that story. And this pastor of this other church had heard that story and gone, ooh. Nobody had rebuked him. There'd been nothing said to him, but he in himself was affected by that and went, you know what? If I'm actually going to do what God's put me here to do, I need to, I need to spend some time focusing on my family. So he was like, because he felt like he was doing what Rod had talked about to a sense. He was just letting ministry get in the way of loving his wife and he had kids. So he basically thought that through and talked to this was a Presbyterian church, so the elders, and had said that he was, and so he announced this to his church, and that had been like the week before, and I feel like Rod had been there, yeah, because there was this weird, so many God incidences making this happen. And that had happened very recently. And Rod told me that story when he was meeting for coffee with me, because what he wanted to say was, he wanted to say, Fee, there are churches where the leadership, are accountable and take things, and I just went, wow, that's a church. I want to go to that church. And so we did. So it was, it was in Cogra. And Sadie and I went, and the first week that we went, it actually wasn't that pastor preaching, it was one of their elders, and they were doing a series about the Trinity, and he was talking about God the Father's love, and we sang, I can't even remember what the song was now, I wish I remember what the song was. We sang a song after I was when you're just keeping it together in the sermon, and then we sang this song, and I bawled, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so for 9 months, we walked alongside Solies as they planted, and we also went to Kirk Place. And through that journey, my mum went to Kirk Place because it took Mum a while, and she has changes now, but Mum, because Stu and Matt planted Solies, and because I didn't, Mum went, they fell on their feet and Fee got thrown to the wolves, which wasn't true. And I told her so many times, but that, she's a mum.
Yeah, of course.
And so she wouldn't go to Guymerang anymore, and she wouldn't go to Solies either. So she came to Kirk Place with us, and she then stayed there. And then I was like, wow, not only you've taught me things, but you taught Mum things, because then they went through a journey of something very similar where there was no transparency, there was issues in leadership, it was all hush hush. Anyway, that church doesn't exist anymore. That's a long story. But Mum stayed till the death knell, and then came to Woolooware, and so she's now, which is now Cronulla Soul Revival. So that's another whole really cool thing for me, like a blessing for me that happened. But during that 9 months, it became apparent to me that Soul Revival was my home, and it was also very clear that it didn't really matter to me what I thought about the rest of the show. The pastors at Soul Revival Church, I knew if I ever had a concern about anything, I could go to them and I would get a hearing. And that's really all I wanted. Like, people at Place and other people I met during that time would be like, there's no perfect church, Fee. And I'm like, I'm not looking for a perfect church. That's not the problem here. But there has to be a level of accountability, and you're not perfect when you're a leader, and you're not above reproach when you're a leader, and you can't just make your own calls when you're a leader. You're a servant leader, you're a shepherd under the great shepherd. And I just felt like that's not what I was seeing. So then we said goodbye to Kirk Place and completely went, yep, we're going to stick with Solies. So that's how that little period happened.
I think that's
Lovely.
a perfect way to end.
Great way to close up.
Yeah, really good way to close up. But I would like to say just that little bit when you're talking about Kirk Place and your mum, that's still God working through you, Fee. So I think through all this stuff that you, like, something again I always admire about you is how strong your faith is.
Thank you. Well,
because
mum, like, what a cool thing. Like, I don't agree. I get really sad when people say, and actually I think this was came up in one of the shock absorbers recently, the whole thing of like kids like who have grown up in church families that they have to have their own church.
Oh yes, we did.
I don't agree with that at all. I'm like, you know, having not grown up with a family that went to church together, I'm like, if you've got a family that go to church together, flipping hell, that's amazing. Don't get rid of that. Don't lose that. That's great. And like some circumstances it would have to happen. People move, whatever. But you know, don't think that you've got to find. I don't. That makes me sad when people feel that way. But Mum had that journey of being at Kirk Place, and yeah, that was a real refining thing for her.
It's like, where do you? How are you allowing God to work through you? That's again the thing that you always look back on times and you're like, oh, what was God doing then? And I think you've alluded to it a fair bit today, but also I'm glad you came back to Soul Revival because again, I've said to you before, like you're the first person that told me the real God, the true gospel.
Yeah.
Out of
and we
anyone
never actually we never left per se. It was like, but I don't know. What are we going to do?
Like you were just going through a decision-making process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I am glad that you are still part of Soul Revival.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool, and just means that things like this, you know, can still have connections, and I can. We talked about last. I can go to youth group and lead kids who I led their parents. Like, yay!
That's
so cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
And you were in the photo at the start.
I am, and I was.
Would you like any final words at the end?
Oh, I don't know. It's just been cool I've been here the whole time, and it's been really lovely to be friends with you for a very long time. And
is that long term?
Yeah, and I think it's also low key.
Yeah,
it's pretty relational. It's really cool, and like I'm pretty sure you're one of my godparents. Like I think that's.
Well, you don't have.
I don't have official godparents.
But I was in the.
Did you stand up?
I stood up when your
Okay.
parents said we want to invite everyone.
Yeah. So that's a cool little element of our relationship. That's always something funny I chat with Katie about, is just like she has specific godparents, and so she when she talks about people in my life, she's they're your godparents. I'm like, yeah, I think so. Like I don't know, there's lots of people stood up. But
and again, wasn't that and that just it's a little example of like your parents saying we want to do something differently for the gospel and just give this a go.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the fact that was at a different church and things didn't go the way that we assumed made that a little bit like, I mean, I'm sure that their hearts at that time was we're going to be here forever and these people are going to grow up with Ethan forever. And that wasn't what happened, but not through any of our design, but God had another design. Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's really
That's
cool.
It. God's got a design and he puts you through hard things and easy things and people do sinful things and people, you know, but but we just have to trust God. Yeah. And like, so.
He's good and he knows what he's doing.
He is.
Even though we don't.
Yeah. And there's refinings and there's so many things that have come out of different things and there's still sad things about, you know, what happened, but.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Here we are, still under God's grace.
Yep.
Amen.
Let's wrap it up. We'll get another part 4. We'll book in a part 4, Pete.
We'll book it a part 4.
You're going to get sick of me eventually.
Oh, well, you know, tough. Shall we finish with one way?
Let's do it.
One way.
One way.
Thanks, everyone.